Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
You're fat, stupid, ugly. Even a homeless man wouldn't look at you. The wife simply smiled mysteriously in response, for her husband didn't know the main thing. Maria, barely holding back tears, looked at the burnt pie. She had tried so hard. She had carefully whipped the ingredients, lovingly laid out the filling, imagining how she would delight her husband and children with this wonderful pastry tonight. Nicholas loved fish pie. But everything went wrong the moment she put the pie in the oven. First, her youngest son Andrea woke up and started whimpering in his crib. She had to drop everything and go soothe him. Then 3-year-old Damaso made a fuss because his toy car broke. Maria, holding 1-year-old Andrea in her arms, started fixing the stupid toy car, thinking to herself, when will they ever lift the quarantine at the daycare? She was going mad with 2 little ones at home. And then Clara came home from school and declared right from the doorstep that she wasn't going back to school, all because they had started giving grades in the 2nd grade, and today she got a D in drawing. "It's your fault," Clara sobbed. "Other moms drew for their kids, they got good grades." "But, darling, that's not right," Maria countered. "You need to learn everything yourself." "You don't love me," her daughter yelled. She had to calm her down too, eventually agreeing to draw the next picture herself. And so, more than an hour passed in chaos, and only then did a suspicious smell of smoke waft from the kitchen. "The pie," gasped Maria, handing Andrea to Clara and dashing to the kitchen, but it was too late. Thick smoke was billowing from the oven, and what was left on the baking tray was a pile of charcoal. The pie was canceled. Clara decided that today's lunch would consist of ravioli, and candies would suffice with coffee. Nicholas, of course, would be disappointed. He was supposed to come home for lunch today and knew about his favorite pie. Well, she'd explain somehow. Soon Nicholas was already standing in the doorway. "Yuck! What stinks so much?" he grimaced. "Nicholas, I've opened the windows, it'll air out soon." Maria peered out from the kitchen guiltily. "The pie just burned." "Oh, Lord! What kind of hostess are you?" Nicholas exclaimed in annoyance. "The one time I come home for lunch, and this is what I get. It stinks. The house is a mess." Nicholas irritably kicked the toys Damaso had scattered in the hallway. "Maria, do you ever do anything around the house?" her husband continued to fume. "Clean up already. You sit at home all day and it's still a mess." Tears welled up in Maria's eyes from hurt. She wanted to tell Nicholas that she hadn't even sat down since the morning. In the morning, she ran with Damaso and Andrea to the clinic. The younger one needed a vaccination, and the elder one had to be checked by the pediatrician. After all, there was chickenpox in daycare, and she had to make sure her son wasn't sick. Then at home, she put Andrea and Damaso to bed, did a bit of work, started 2 loads of laundry, then began cooking. And then the children demanded her attention. But her husband wouldn't listen to any of it. He walked into the kitchen, sat down at the table, and waited expectantly. Maria busied herself at the stove. She managed to quickly slice a salad. She called the older children. And while the whole family wolfed down their lunch, she fed the little one porridge right there. Andrea fussed, spat it out. Maria, with admirable patience, managed to spoon some food into him. "It would have been better with the pie," Nicholas remarked at the end of the meal, washing down a candy with coffee. "But what can I expect? We've been married 10 years, and you still haven't learned to be a good housewife." And he stood up without even saying thank you. Maria was used to her husband's behavior, so she was almost not offended. Clara, watching her father, also silently left the table. "Thank you," only Damaso politely said. After all, they teach good manners in daycare. Maria smiled tiredly at her son, holding the youngest, who had fallen asleep again. She anxiously touched the child's forehead. Could he be sick after the vaccine? "Don't wait up for dinner," her husband's voice came from the hallway. "I have a meeting today, and then a little corporate event. We're sending off the chief accountant to retirement." "Understood," Maria responded quietly and submissively, lulling her son. The door slammed, and the older children started chattering in the room. Maria walked in with the baby. Seeing her younger brother, Clara pouted, "Now Mom will tell us to be quiet again," while Damaso began to yawn. "Sweetie, why don't you watch some cartoons in the living room while I put your brothers to bed?" Maria said gently. With her lips still pouted, the girl left the room. Maria watched her thoughtfully. Yes, her daughter was probably jealous of her brothers, but Maria never favored anyone and always tried to give her love and attention equally. The boys were already asleep when the doorbell rang. Maria hurried to the door. Standing on the threshold was Viola, a young woman who worked as their nanny for a few hours a day when Maria needed to step out. "Hello, Viola." Maria greeted her happily. "Come in, the boys just fell asleep. Just sit with them. I'm worried about Andrea, he might have a fever. Damaso has been sniffling since morning, but there's no rash. The doctor said it looks like we dodged the bullet this time, no chickenpox." "That's good," Viola smiled in response. "Are you taking Clara now?" "Yes, she needs to be at the music school in an hour," Maria nodded. "Then I need to run some errands and pick up Clara afterward. We'll be gone for about 3 hours. When the boys wake up, it's better not to go out. Andrea might be sick from the vaccine." "Understood," Viola nodded. She went to the boys' bedroom while Maria began getting Clara ready. The girl was being difficult. She didn't want to go to the music school, and only the remark that Dad wouldn't like it persuaded her. Soon, Maria was driving, glancing at the back seat where Clara sat, frowning. "Clara, do you really dislike studying music so much?" Maria asked her daughter. "I don't want to." Clara scowled. "But you know Dad wants you to play the piano flawlessly." "I know," the girl sighed. "But I want to learn to draw." Maria just sighed. Indeed, Clara drew quite well, but Nicholas thought all her drawings were just scribbles. Yet, being a musician was prestigious, something to boast about in front of friends. And no one in their family would argue with Nicholas because he was the head. After escorting her daughter to the vestibule of the music school, Maria hurried to the publishing house. They had already called her. There was a little freelance work for her. Maria occasionally took on assignments, having graduated from the foreign languages faculty. They didn't need the money, but she didn't want to lose her qualifications. Although Nicholas only laughed at her freelancing, what money is that? Just small change. Quickly visiting the publishing house, Maria returned to the music school, and there, comfortably seated on a couch, she finally gave herself a little break for the first time all day. She sat, listening to the sound of various instruments playing in the classrooms, and remembered her entire life. Maria always dreamed of a big, loving family, a husband, children, a home, complete fulfillment. She herself grew up in a small family. Her mother never talked about her father, just brushed off Maria's questions. They lived in a small village by a large river. A cozy little house, passed down from Maria's grandparents who died when she was still in kindergarten. The house had a large fruit garden. It was especially beautiful there in the autumn when the apples were ripe. It seemed like the air was saturated with their sweet scent. Sometimes, sitting in the old gazebo entwined with ivy, you would just breathe in the air, the silence ringing, cranes crying somewhere in the clear heights, desperate sun rays piercing through the ivy lace, and you just enjoying all of it. Beautiful. Yes, Maria loved her family home, the estate, to trembling. When her mother baked apple pie and they then drank hot chocolate together in that very gazebo, it seemed like happiness was right there and nothing else was needed. But time passed. Maria grew up. Her mother worked as a teacher at the local school, so when it came time for Maria to choose a career, she didn't hesitate. She would be a foreign language teacher. Of course, she didn't want to leave her family home, but what to do? She needed to get an education. Maria entered university without any issues and studied adequately. Sure, things happened, but she never once regretted choosing her profession. Somehow, it turned out that all her friends at university and roommates had romances, but Maria was always alone. Why was unclear. She was both beautiful and smart. Her friends joked that guys were afraid of her. "You're like the Snow Queen," her friends teased. "You just look at them, and their hearts sink. They think they're unworthy of you." In some ways, her friends were right. Maria did come off as an unapproachable beauty, but it was only on the surface. Like all girls, she too wanted to go on dates and fall in love, but she was always alone. She didn't know how to be sociable, to joke around, to flirt. She neither knew how nor wanted to. She believed that her prince would surely meet her along her path someday. And one day, that meeting happened. Maria was in her 4th year of college. She went with some girlfriends to celebrate the City Day Festival. After long walks and dancing, they were tired and sat down on the grass near the waterfront. Her friends quickly decided to mix business with pleasure. They bought some food and lemonade. They all enjoyed the treats and laughed together. Maria tried to join in, but she was already tired of it all. She just wanted to return to the dorm, to collapse on her bed and sleep. To shake off the drowsiness and fatigue, Maria decided to walk down to the river. The girls didn't notice her leave, especially since some handsome boys had joined them. Maria walked down the steps to the water, sat at the shore, and touched the water with her hand. "I wish I could swim now," she heard a male voice quite close by and even jumped in surprise. Maria turned around in astonishment and saw a young man a few steps away, a tall, attractive blonde. He smiled at Maria widely and openly. "Are you also tired of all this hustle and bustle?" he asked and took a step toward Maria. "A little," the girl admitted. "Me too. My friends went to a cafe, but I felt like taking a walk." The young man approached the shore and, touching the water, smiled. "No, the water is too cold for swimming. And it's not the place. By the way, my name is Nicholas." Maria. For some reason, she wanted to talk to this man. He seemed interesting at first glance. And Nicholas looked at Maria with interest, not planning to leave anytime soon. He suggested a walk along the shore, and she agreed. It might have been reckless on her part, but this young man inspired her trust. As they walked, they chatted. Nicholas told her he worked at a bank. He was born and had lived in this city all his life. His parents taught at an economics university. Maria talked about her studies. Then they simply chatted about trivial things and didn't notice it had gotten dark. Then fireworks burst over the river. It was a magnificent spectacle, a real fairy tale. Maria stood, admiring the view, and felt as if her life too would soon be like a fairy tale, and her prince was right there beside her. Afterward, Nicholas helped her find her friends, even offered to give her a ride, but Maria declined, though she did jot down Nicholas's phone number when he sneakily dictated it to her. "That's a decent guy." Anastasia, her roommate, winked appreciatively as they rode on crowded transport. "You should have let him give you a lift." But Maria just shook her head in response. After all, she didn't know Nicholas that well. He stayed on her mind, and a few days later, she called him herself. Yes, there was no longer a Snow Queen, just a regular girl who dreamed of love. Nicholas was delighted with her call, invited her to a cafe that weekend, and then everything moved quickly. In fact, Maria was already 4 months pregnant when she received her diploma. Then there was a wedding. Nicholas's parents were not thrilled with their son's choice. They had always dreamed of him choosing a wealthier bride, not some simple girl from the sticks. But they did not express their displeasure, merely reducing their contact after the wedding to a minimum. Maria's mother, however, was happy for her daughter. At least she won't be alone. And Maria's husband turned out to be so caring and sweet. Anna believed Maria would definitely be happy with Nicholas. And it seemed to be the case. Soon, Nicholas and Maria had a daughter. Nicholas was a bit disappointed. He wanted a son, but then he thought a bit, even occasionally holding his daughter, although the main responsibilities and troubles still fell on Maria. When Clara was 3, Maria decided it was time to realize her professional potential and told her husband about it. "What job?" He was genuinely surprised. "My wife will stay at home. I earn well." And it was indeed so. They had a huge apartment with nice renovations, a country house, a car. Maria thought her husband was right. What else did she need? Stay home and take care of your daughter. Then Damaso was born, and the care of the children completely engulfed Maria. She spent less and less time on herself, simply dissolving into the family. She felt she was the happiest, a husband, children, what more could one want? And only her former classmate and friend Anastasia, with whom Maria still communicated after marriage, convinced her that this was not the way to live. Maria, you studied so well. Don't you want to grow professionally? Anastasia said one day at a cafe, when Maria managed to get out. No, I understand that having a husband and kids is great, but still, in life, you need to be able to rely on yourself. What are you trying to say? Maria was surprised. What if something happens, like Nicholas has an affair and leaves you? How will you manage alone with the children? Wait for his alimony? Anastasia, Nicholas will never leave me. Maria shook her head vehemently. She didn't even want to think about it. No, I believe that will never happen. But a woman should always look ahead. Maria, you need to find a job. But Nicholas doesn't want me to. Fine, we won't tell him. Listen, a friend of mine works at a publishing house, and they need a translator right now. Why don't you try? You could work in your free time from husband and kids, earn some money. You don't need to officially get a job there, just take assignments from time to time. So, should I call my friend? There was no getting away from Anastasia, and Maria agreed. At first, she didn't think about calling the publishing house, but then she thought, what's the harm? At least she wouldn't lose her skills. She took the first assignment, then a second, and for several years now, Maria has been earning some extra money with her translations. When Nicholas found out, he was very displeased. Wasn't he giving her enough money? But Maria convinced him that she was doing it purely for her own pleasure. The children were taken care of, everything at home was in order. Maria managed everything herself, although they did have a visiting nanny. And Nicholas allowed his wife to take on freelance work at the publishing house. Then Maria became pregnant for the third time. And this became a challenge for her. She started having problems in the first trimester. There was a threat of miscarriage, then her blood pressure spiked, and swelling followed. The doctors even suggested terminating the pregnancy. Honestly, Maria was having such a hard time that she was almost ready to agree. But then Nicholas took a stand. This child must be born, he declared. What kind of woman are you if you can't give birth? At Maria's timid remark that they already had 2 children, Nicholas erupted in anger. He yelled about her heartlessness, her stupidity, and even laziness. Just say that you simply don't want to have more children, he said. Nicholas, that's not it. But I'm feeling so bad right now. You're feeling bad? What about the baby inside you? He understands everything. It was the 8th week of pregnancy at that time. In the end, Maria agreed with her husband. Yes, the baby wasn't to blame for the mother's problems. And she bravely continued to endure all the hardships of her condition. When she was 6 months pregnant, doctors said she had to be hospitalized for conservation. She had to literally lie in bed until the birth. Maria was very worried about her 2 other children, who were left at home. The problem was also that their old nanny had left. Tina was an older woman and immediately refused to take care of the children around the clock. She was too old for that. Maria's mother came from the village for some time, but she also couldn't stay with the grandchildren all the time until the birth because she still had to work. There was no hope from Nicholas's parents. Nicholas himself found a new nanny, a young girl. Viola had just graduated from a teaching college and had no experience with children, but she quickly found common ground with Damaso and Clara. Nicholas told Maria about this when he visited the hospital. And Maria calmed down, confident that everything would be all right now. Andrea was born a little early, but it had no impact on his health. However, this third pregnancy significantly undermined Maria's health. In addition to all the other problems associated with the postpartum period, Maria began experiencing serious hormonal disorders. She quickly began gaining weight. If, after giving birth, she was a little over 80 kilograms, now, when Andrea turned 1, her weight had crossed 100 kilograms. Despite all the doctor's efforts, diets, and exercise, her weight slowly but surely only increased. This deeply upset Maria. She understood she had become fat, unattractive, her self-esteem was below the floor. But the most bitter thing was that Nicholas started to pick on her, reproach her for her extra weight, and even mock her. "Look at yourself," he repeatedly said. "Other women give birth to 5 and are slim a month after giving birth. And you? You look like a cow. Nicholas, it's all hormones." Maria tried to justify herself through tears. "I eat so little, I'm busy with the children all day, sometimes I only have a cup of coffee in the evening, and still, the weight keeps increasing." "You're lying. If that were true, you'd be blown away by the wind." And she was indeed swaying from hunger. Sometimes Maria resorted to drastic measures. She would deliberately not eat, do exercises at home, and then barely be able to stand on her feet. But her husband still didn't believe she was trying to change the situation, accusing her of laziness and gluttony. And the doctors, with a knowing look, just talked about proper nutrition and prescribed new pills one after the other. Nicholas completely stopped watching his language. He could call Maria a little cow or piggy even in front of guests. It hurt her deeply. But still, to not spoil the guest's mood, she turned everything into a joke, and at night, cried into her pillow. Most often, she fell asleep alone. Her husband was always delayed at some meetings, and when he came home late at night, he would sleep in the living room. Did he have someone else? No, Maria pushed away these thoughts. Nicholas couldn't do this to her. He still loved her, and they had 3 children. Only the children were Maria's solace. Looking at the youngest, she marveled, how could she not have wanted such a miracle? Andrea was above all her suffering, as were all her other children. And Maria mentally thanked Anastasia every time, who once just handed her that part-time job. No, it didn't bring big money or a sense of self-sufficiency, but translating texts at night and in snippets between the children's sleep, Maria was at least somewhat distracted. As time flew by in reminiscences, Clara ran into the vestibule pleased. Today her teacher had praised her. Maria hugged her daughter, realizing once again that her children were her happiness. And they drove home. By the way, Maria had learned to drive when Clara was little, but had only recently started driving. Nicholas had given her his old car so she could drive the children to school, daycare, and the clinic. He, however, remarked sarcastically that the shock absorbers might not withstand Maria. It was hurtful, but as usual, the woman turned it into a joke, saying he should worry about not breaking the seat of his Jeep with his bones. That's how Maria and Nicholas were lately, outwardly quite a decent, happy family, but something was off between them. The door to Maria's apartment was opened by the nanny. Viola reported that the boys were still sleeping. She had tidied up in the children's room and put some clothes in the washing machine. "Thank you." Maria smiled gratefully. "You're my helper." "Viola, how would I manage without you?" Viola just smiled, then hesitated, thinking about something. "What is it, Viola?" Maria became concerned. "Maria, I would like to ask for 3 days off. I need to go to my mother in the village. She's fallen ill," Viola said timidly. "For 3 days?" Maria pondered. "Yes, it's a bit inconvenient. But of course, go ahead, I'll manage somehow without you." "Thank you." Viola brightened and smiled broadly. "Maria, just hang on for 3 days, and I'll be back." "All right. Tell your mother to get well soon." "I will." Viola chirped happily, waved at Clara, and rushed out of the apartment. At that time, Clara was grimly listening to the adults' conversation, and when Viola left, she grimly declared, "I don't like that Viola, she's kind of a rat." "Clara, what are you saying?" Maria was genuinely surprised. "You've been with her for so long. Viola takes care of you, helps with your homework, plays with your brothers. Why would you say such a thing? That's not nice." I still think she's bad. Clara pouted and went into the living room. Maria decided that her daughter was just in a bad mood and didn't take her words seriously. She went to wake her sons, otherwise they would keep her up at night. But at the same time, Nicholas would soon be home. She needed to prepare dinner. Maria ran to the kitchen, quickly put food in the oven, and made a salad. Then Andrea cried out from the nursery, followed by Damaso stomping around. They were awake, and Clara, to avoid hearing the noise, turned the cartoons up louder in the living room. Maria rushed to soothe her sons. In this chaos, they didn't hear Nicholas come home. "What's this mayhem?" was the first thing Nicholas said, appearing in the doorway of the nursery. Again noise, screaming. Clara is watching cartoons again. "Can't you keep an eye on the children?" "Oh, dear," trying not to notice her husband's discontent, Maria replied, "The boys just woke up, and Clara is resting after music school. We'll be having dinner soon." "I ate at a restaurant. We had negotiations today," Nicholas responded dryly, went to the bathroom, and then yelled from there, "Maria, have your clothes just been lying in the machine for a while?" Maria remembered that Viola had started the laundry, rushed to her husband. "I'll take care of it now." "And how long has it been sitting on standby?" her husband grumbled. "You really don't take care of the appliances. What's going to happen to it?" Maria shrugged nonchalantly. "You talk like that because you don't know the value of money, because you're used to sitting on my neck," Nicholas flared up. "Nicholas," Maria said, hurt and looking at her husband in surprise. "You were the one who told me not to work. And when would I even have the time now? Andrea is still so small. But I am taking on freelance work anyway." "Freelance work?" Nicholas smirked. "What can you do? You're incompetent. Good only for changing diapers." "Nicholas, do we have financial problems?" "We have problems with you. You can't do anything right, even though you're always home." Nicholas snapped back critically, looking at Maria. "I think you've gotten even fatter." "Nicholas, why are you picking on everything today?" Maria said, tears forming. "Do you want to argue?" "Why argue with you?" Nicholas scoffed. "Go and feed your husband in the kitchen." And Maria, quickly hanging the laundry, went to the kitchen to set the table. Soon, all 5 of them were having dinner. Maria held Andrea on her lap. He was the only one eating baby puree. "You could also do with switching to vegetables." Nicholas chewed on a piece of meat, watching as Maria fed the youngest son with one hand and picked at her own plate with the other. Maria didn't respond to him, just looked reproachfully. She was tired of his constant criticism. When would he ever calm down? Nicholas finished eating and then announced that he would be leaving for a business trip for 3 days to another city in the north of the country. "Where is that?" Clara asked. "It's far, daughter," Nicholas smiled. "We're opening a new office there. I'm being sent to oversee everything." "For 3 days?" Maria pondered. "That's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Do offices even operate on weekends?" "Business doesn't know weekends," he lectured her. "Anyway, you wouldn't understand. Just iron a couple of shirts for me." Maria nodded in agreement. After sending the older children to play and putting the youngest in a playpen, she cleaned up the kitchen and started preparing her husband's clothes for the trip. Then, as she was falling asleep, she thought about one thing: Lord, how tired she was of everything. And the untranslated manuscript still lay in her purse. The next morning, Nicholas woke up earlier than usual, quickly got ready, and left while everyone was still asleep, not even saying goodbye. From the window, Maria saw his Jeep driving away from the house, sighed sadly, and began preparing breakfast for her daughter. Yes, something was definitely amiss between her and Nicholas. After sending her daughter to school, she spent the morning with her sons, occasionally trying to start translating the text. She already realized it was a very interesting story, something like a confession, but she had absolutely no time to delve into it until late at night when all her children were peacefully snoring in their beds. She finally had a moment to work on the translation calmly. At first, Maria thought she was translating a typical love story. But the deeper she delved into the text, the more she realized she had a real treasure in front of her. Or was it just a fairy tale? It was written by a woman named Leonora. In the 1970s, she married a man she did not love. The marriage was out of convenience. She was a young, beautiful girl. He was a rather influential man in their town, much older than her. His name was Pablo. Pablo was very fond of Leonora, and he repeatedly proposed to her, but the girl just laughed it off. Then her mother fell seriously ill. A lot of money was needed for her treatment, and Leonora didn't have it. That's when Pablo appeared again and said he could solve all her problems. All she needed to do was marry him, and Leonora, who loved her mother dearly, agreed. Yes, Pablo helped with the treatment, but unfortunately, her mother could not be saved. And Leonora became the wife of an elderly man. She wanted to divorce him later, but he was against it. Moreover, Pablo turned out to be a real despot and tyrant. Daily abuse and beatings became routine in their large and wealthy home. For many years, Leonora dreamed of escaping from her detested husband. She slowly saved money for her escape. One day, she gathered some of her jewelry, given to her by her husband, and hid it in a cottage at her mother's place. The house was abandoned. She did this so that if there was ever a divorce, he couldn't take her jewelry, and it would be her financial safety net. Her husband, although old, still had plenty of strength. Leonora still endured his abuses, all the while dreaming that one day she would meet her hero who would rescue her from this nightmare. Then, a crisis hit the country. Foreign tourists started to appear. One day on the promenade, Leonora met an interesting man. They started talking by chance. He asked her something like how to get to the library, speaking in broken language. They chatted briefly and agreed to meet again, and they did. Leonora fell in love. Then her elderly husband found out about her affair, and he was furious. Pablo probably would have killed her if she hadn't managed to escape through an open window. She ran to the hotel where Mateo was staying. He understood everything. Then, by a happy twist of fate, they were able to flee abroad together, and they lived happily there for many years. Her beloved died recently. Leonora herself is unwell, but she never regretted her actions. Only one thought troubles her: is her mother's cottage still intact? Have her jewels been found? If they have been found, God bless that person, may they bring them good fortune. And if they still lie there, untouched? What if they could help someone change their destiny? Dear friend reading these lines, you may use my treasures. I hope they bring you happiness. I specifically sent this confession story to the publishing house so that a decent person would use them. I believe that someone who knows several languages is such a person. The address of the village, the street, and the house number were written next. Maria translated everything carefully and wondered, is this fiction or is there really a treasure? The address indicated that the village was 60 kilometers from the city. Maria didn't sleep all night, pondering how to proceed. Just hand over the translation to the publishing house, first visit the address, or remove the translation about the village from the text. Falling asleep in the early morning, Maria decided she would submit the text as she translated it, but first, she would check the necessary information herself. She didn't sleep long. The children woke her up. Surprisingly, the woman got up energetic and full of strength. She called Anastasia. Her friend was very surprised by the Saturday call. They didn't communicate that often. Friend, what's happened? Anastasia yawned. Nothing's wrong, but I need help. Can you help me? The nanny is away until Monday, and I urgently need to leave for 3 to 4 hours today. Nicholas is also on a business trip. And, her friend prolonged. Anastasia, please look after the children. Clara is at home today, and so are Damaso and, of course, Andrea. I can't take them with me. Dear, do you have a lover or something? Anastasia asked with a chuckle. No, it's something else. I'll tell you later, Maria smiled. Help me out, friend. You're a teacher. You can handle my 3 little rascals, right? Fine, Anastasia grumbled, I'll come over. Anastasia, who was childless, didn't relish looking after 3 kids, but she didn't want to refuse a friend whom she saw so rarely, especially since Maria had asked so earnestly. And so, 2 hours later, Maria was driving to that very village, the address of which she had translated the night before. The village turned out to be abandoned. Everywhere were half-collapsed houses, weeds nearly taller than a person. Maria shivered, imagining she had to get out of the car. What if there were some homeless people living here? Or stray dogs? But after driving to the end of the overgrown road, she saw that it was deserted. But how to find the house mentioned in Leonora's story? From some buildings, only ruins remained. There were no signs of street names or house numbers. But then she figured it out. There was definitely only one street here, house number 15. She just needed to count correctly from the beginning. This is what Maria set out to do. To her surprise, the 15th house turned out to be a rather solid structure. Built from local timber, it seemed to have grown into the ground, clinging firmly with what remained of its foundations. Maria got out of the car and made her way through the dense overgrowth into the yard. There was the front door. If there was ever a lock, now only a latch clumsily hung on the door. Maria pushed the door, and it creaked open. Cautiously, she looked around. It was dark. She stepped inside. A century's worth of dust and mustiness hit her. Cobwebs immediately clung to her face. Maria brushed them off, looked up at the ceiling. It was hanging. Scary. What if it collapsed? And the floor creaked treacherously. The house was a mess. Apparently, it had been visited many times by lovers of abandoned property. If there had been anything, it had surely been found long ago. Disappointment clenched her heart. She had come here for nothing. She already wanted to turn back, but it would be foolish to come this far and not check everything. Maria remembered where Leonora had hidden the jewels. Behind an old buffet by the window was a small hideaway. The buffet stood against the wall. Nobody had moved it, although all its contents were thrown on the floor. It looked like a very heavy cabinet. How to move it? What if the floor collapsed? Goosebumps crawled up Maria's back as she thought about what could happen if she fell through. But then, a spirit of adventure seized her, and she decided to try, very carefully. Surprisingly, the buffet easily gave way to the pressure of her hands. Maria pushed it away from the wall. Luckily, the floor swayed but held. And the next second, the woman joyfully exclaimed, indeed, there was a small door in the wall. Maria pulled it towards her, then fearlessly put her hand inside, feeling around for something, a box. With a pounding heart, she pulled it out. It was a medium-sized chest made to look antique. The woman opened it and gasped. The chest was stuffed to the brim with jewels. Yes, apparently Leonora's husband, although a tyrant, was certainly not stingy. Here, her Nicholas had only given her a pair of earrings over all the years of their marriage, and that was back when they were dating. She had found what she needed. With careful but quick steps, she walked outside, took a breath of fresh air, and smiled. It turns out, miracles do happen, and in our times, you can find a treasure. She drove home, pondering how to handle the find. She decided that when Nicholas returned, she would tell him everything. Although their relationship had been strained lately, such matters needed to be resolved together. They were a family, after all. But Maria said nothing to Anastasia. Her friend was always known for her rare loquacity, so it was better she didn't know too much. She returned to the city in the evening. Anastasia was reading a book to Clara and Damaso. Andrea was asleep. Finally, Anastasia exclaimed, seeing her friend, closed the book, and looked at the children. All right, dears, now go play, but quietly. The children immediately rushed to their mother. Mommy, we missed you so much, Clara said, hanging on Maria. And Maria smiled in response. We're going to eat now. I've already fed them, Anastasia shrugged. They ate about 2 hours ago. It won't hurt to eat again, Maria replied with a smile. Oh, friend, how do you manage with 3? I'd go mad in such chaos. It's not chaos, it's my life. Maria laughed softly. After seeing her friend out, she carefully took the old chest out of her bag, stealthily opened it, and then quickly snapped it shut again. What to do with it, she would decide when Nicholas returned. Nicholas arrived home early on Monday morning. Dropping his things in the hallway, he immediately started getting ready for work, not even asking how the family had spent these 3 days without him. Nicholas looked refreshed, as if he hadn't been on a business trip but somewhere in the South. That day the daycare finally reopened. And Maria, with Andrea in her arms, walked Clara to school, then took Damaso to daycare, after which she stopped by the publishing house to submit the translated story. "Is it an interesting story?" asked the department head, adjusting his glasses and looking over Maria's translation. "It's nothing new," she responded indifferently. "Just another soap opera, love and a tyrannical husband, a fairy tale, in other words." "I see," nodded the head. "You can get your payment at the accounting." Maria said goodbye and hurried off. She felt as if she had done something wrong, like she had stolen something and could be exposed. Yet, essentially, she had just been timely in her actions. At home, while Andrea played in the playpen, Maria decided to sort through Nicholas's clothes, wash what was needed. In his suitcase was the usual assortment, and only one item caught her attention, an ordinary pair of flip-flops. Why had Nicholas taken them with him? Surely the hotel provided footwear. Where would he need flip-flops? They were stained with something white. Cement, perhaps? Maria wondered to herself and carefully ran her finger over the surface. Doesn't seem like it. Salt? She raised her eyebrows. It seemed as if the shoes had absorbed seawater and now had dried. But where was the sea in that city? Or had her husband not actually been in that city but flown south instead? She meticulously examined everything in the suitcase, found a shoehorn. Probably Nicholas had accidentally packed it. It had a hotel name on it. Dropping everything, Maria rushed to the computer to type in the hotel's name to verify that it was in that very city. Then she stared bewildered at the monitor. The internet showed that the shoehorn was from a hotel in the South. Salt on the flip-flops, that cursed shoehorn. Did this mean her husband had flown south for the weekend and lied to her? And with whom had he spent time? The doorbell rang in the hallway. She hurried to open the door. It was Viola. She too looked refreshed, as if she hadn't had to care for her sick mother over the weekend. "Hello, Maria." Viola chirped happily as she entered. "How have you been managing?" "We've been getting by," Maria shrugged, preoccupied with her own thoughts. "How's your mother?" "Oh, she's much better now," Viola replied, her eyes sparkling with joy. She walked into the room to check on Andrea, while Maria stood in the hallway. There was a strange feeling that she was being deceived, or perhaps it was just her imagination. Later that evening, after the children were asleep and Nicholas sat at the computer post-dinner, Maria decided to confront him directly about where he had really flown. "Do you even use your brain? Has it gone soft from all that fat?" he grimaced, annoyed by her question. "I told you, I was on a business trip up north." He slammed his laptop shut and headed to the bathroom, while Maria just stood there, saying nothing in response to his latest insult. Then, hesitantly, she stepped forward, took his phone from the pocket of his jacket, which was carelessly thrown over a chair. Maria had never checked Nicholas's correspondence before. Despite their recent disagreements, she had trusted him all these years. But something clicked in her mind. Nicholas was hiding something from her. As the water ran in the bathroom and Nicholas hummed contentedly, she opened his messages on the phone. What she read there shocked her. Her husband had been texting their nanny, Viola, and this conversation had been going on for several months. "Hi, kitten. Missing you," he wrote. "Darling, I can't sleep without you." "I feel so lonely," she responded. And it went on. Then Maria read a message where they discussed a vacation in the South. "Can't wait to get away from that cow for 3 days." Nicholas had written, "My sunshine, I'm looking forward to it." Viola replied in the same tone. It turned out Nicholas had taken a vacation to the south with Viola, and the nanny had lied to her, saying she needed to care for her sick mother. Lies. Lies. These two had been deceiving her for a long time. It felt so disgusting. Tears streamed down her face. She wanted to confront her husband right there, but the children were asleep, and she needed to collect herself to think things through. What would happen if she just accused her husband right now? Probably, he would make excuses, or worse, start blaming her. It was his style. Besides worrying, she wouldn't achieve anything, and she needed to be strong, not just for herself, but for her little ones. What could she do now? Pack up and leave for her mother's village? No, that wasn't a solution. How would she live? Then Maria remembered her trip to the abandoned village. No, she smiled bitterly. I now have something to live on. I can manage without you, dear. When Nicholas came out of the bathroom, Maria was already lying down to sleep in the living room. Why are you sprawled out here? He wondered. It's more comfortable here, she replied, not looking him in the eye. It was disgusting to look at him. Yeah, he grunted. Well, as you wish. He went to the bedroom. Maria lay awake most of the night, thinking about what to do next. And she cried, but she was sure of one thing: she no longer wanted to live with her husband. Yes, she had endured all his taunts just for the sake of the children, believing that there was still love between them. Yes, things had been a bit strained, but that happens, it's temporary. Now, Maria understood that she was not willing to endure it anymore and would not let herself be trampled on. The next morning, as if nothing had happened, she made breakfast and fed her husband. Nicholas ate his omelet and salad, didn't even say thank you. He left for work, not even pecking her cheek. However, that had been the norm in their family lately. If she hadn't read the messages, Maria wouldn't have thought much of it. But now she knew why her husband acted this way. After sending her daughter to school and her son to daycare, Maria returned home with her youngest child. Soon after, Viola arrived. I no longer require your services, Maria told her at the doorstep. Viola looked at her in surprise. What happened, Maria? Yes, something happened, she replied, looking Viola in the eyes. I found out you've been sleeping with my husband. Viola blushed, then turned pale, then smirked and lifted her chin defiantly. Yes, your husband and I love each other, she said. What did you expect? You let yourself go, hen. Nicholas loves me, and he's only with you for the kids. Get out of here, Maria exclaimed. Sure, please, Viola smirked. I was tired of pretending to be a caring nanny anyway. And if you want to know, we've been together for a long time, since you were in the hospital carrying your last child. Aren't you ashamed to tell me this now? Maria asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Shameless. Nicholas loves me, and he's only with you for the kids. He pities you. But for now, everything suits me just fine. With those words, Viola turned and walked away, leaving Maria standing in the entryway. Only then did she let the tears fall. How could he do this to her? She had completely forgotten herself, dedicating her life to their children, while Nikolai had just been enjoying himself. Nicholas came home by lunchtime. Apparently, Viola had called him and told him that Maria knew everything. What's this mess you've made? He yelled from the doorway. Why did you send Viola away? She'll be back here tomorrow, and she's staying in my house. As long as I'm here, she won't set foot in this place. Maria replied firmly. I'm your wife, and she... Nicholas, aren't you ashamed? You were practically parading around with your mistress right in front of me, with the kids here. How could you? Stop with the cheap theatrics, Nicholas grimaced. I'm a man and can do as I please. Your job is to raise the kids and keep quiet, you hen. So you're not denying that you're having an affair with her? And that you flew to the sea with her, not on some business trip? That's exactly right. Nicholas smirked arrogantly. I can afford it. I'm tired of seeing your unhappy face all the time. Viola's here for Joy, and you're here to do the cleaning, cooking, and laundry. You're my maid, understand? And that's all you'll ever be. Tomorrow, Viola's coming back to the apartment. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Maria. She cried for about an hour, but then suddenly she felt calm. She packed up little Andrea, went to the registry office, and filed for divorce. Nicholas had always been sure she wouldn't manage without him. No, dear, you're wrong. Now, I know I can, she whispered, wiping away her tears as she signed the papers. The woman at the office, seeing her with the child, gently asked if Maria might be rushing into this. Life can be unpredictable, sometimes couples argue, but you should always think of the children first. I am thinking of them, Maria replied quietly. For now, she decided not to tell her husband about the divorce. She needed time to prepare her escape. Maria knew she could do it. Nicholas wouldn't let her go easily. He thought of her as nothing more than a housekeeper. Would he try to take the children? She doubted he wanted the responsibility. To him, the children were merely an accessory of a successful life. He'd always thought only of himself. Now she was sure of it. He wouldn't help financially either. She knew she'd likely get only minimal child support after the divorce. But would that stop her now? Not when she had that precious jewelry box. She knew the pieces were valuable, though selling them might be tricky. But they weren't stolen, she just found them, so she could still use them. And with that money, she could support the children for a while. After that, she had some plans in mind. That evening, Nicholas didn't come home, which actually suited Maria perfectly. She had time to calm down and think. The next day, after putting Andrea down for a nap while the older kids were at school and daycare, she hurried to a pawn shop. Thankfully, Viola hadn't shown up, or else Maria wouldn't have been able to keep her focus so well. The elderly appraiser examined the jewelry for a long time and then asked where she'd gotten them. They belonged to my grandmother, Maria lied. I didn't even know they existed until recently. I found them while cleaning up at the dacha. I see, the man nodded, then named a total amount he could offer for the pieces. It was less than Maria had expected, but it was still a decent amount. She accepted the deal. Stepping out of the pawn shop, she felt a new sense of confidence. She could handle things from here on her own, raise her children without Nicholas. On her way home, she called Anastasia and asked if she knew anyone renting out apartments. There's one option, her friend replied. A colleague of mine at work recently mentioned she doesn't know what to do with her grandmother's apartment. The old lady passed away, rent's piling up, but she doesn't want to let in just anyone. Why do you ask? Do you think your colleague would consider renting it to me and the kids? So, Maria, did you have a fight with Nicholas? I'm getting divorced from him, Maria confessed and briefly explained everything. That scoundrel, exclaimed Anastasia. 3 kids, and he dared to have an affair right under your nose. No shame, no conscience. But Maria, don't rush into anything. How will you manage alone? You don't work, and the kids are small. What are you planning to live on? I'll manage. Maria responded confidently. Just find out about the apartment from your colleague. And, as she reached the apartment, Anastasia called back to tell her that her colleague agreed to let them stay. But a surprise awaited her at the apartment. Viola was sitting in the kitchen, drinking coffee. Ha! You showed up, she said with a smirk. You left your child and ran off. What kind of mother are you? Maria glared at her rival furiously. Now, Viola had dropped her pleasant facade and was no longer the friendly girl. Before Maria sat a brazen woman who thought she could do whatever she wanted. How dare you talk to me like that? Maria protested. I'll talk however I want. I came here to be with the man I love. He invited me here himself, and I will stay as long and as often as I want. You go take care of the kids. Where Maria found the strength, she didn't even know. In no time, she grabbed the bold young woman and threw her out onto the stairwell, followed by Viola's bag. "Don't you dare come here while I'm living here. Once I'm divorced, then you can do whatever you want with Nicholas," she yelled and slammed the door. Andrea woke up, disturbed by the noise. The baby cried. Maria hurried to soothe him. Soon Nicholas arrived, informed by Viola that his wife had kicked her out of the apartment. "How are you treating my woman?" he bellowed as soon as he entered. "Shut up and mind your own business, you hen." "I will not think so," Maria replied unexpectedly calmly. "As long as I'm here, that vermin isn't stepping foot in here. But don't worry, it won't be for long. I'm leaving you today. And I've already filed for divorce." "For divorce?" Nicholas went pale, choking with outrage. "Who gave you the right to decide on your own? You'll be my wife as long as I want." "A wife? Are you kidding me?" Maria exclaimed. "I've been nothing to you for a long time. What did you expect, you hen? But everything suits me, so I won't grant you a divorce. We'll get divorced through court anyway, if not the first time, then later. Why are you suddenly so bold? Did you find someone else, you cow?" Nicholas roared. "Who would want you? Have you looked at yourself lately? You're just a big misunderstanding, fat, stupid, ugly. Even a bum wouldn't glance at you. I am needed by my children." Maria responded with dignity. "And stop insulting me. I'm no longer going to listen to your nastiness. Getting brave all of a sudden. But what can you do on your own? You don't have a penny to your name. If you think I'll help you raise your kids, you're mistaken." "Well, they are your children too," Maria pointed out. "So what?" Nicholas sneered. "They're mine as long as they live with me. If you leave, you raise them however you want. I officially make little money, so don't expect decent child support." "Just as I thought," Maria replied, surprisingly calmly. "I'm leaving with the kids today. You can enjoy your life with your mistress." "And I will." Maria looked him in the eye. "Nicholas, I don't understand. Do you actually enjoy humiliating me like this? Did you really think I could just calmly interact with your mistress, tolerate her presence? A hen isn't supposed to feel. You're just a cook for me," he smirked. "I'm even surprised I married you. My parents were right, you're no match for me. But you know, over the years, it has actually been pleasant to humiliate you. So you were asserting yourself that way? Take it as you want. I warn you again, if you leave now, don't expect any help from me." "Don't worry, I'll manage," Maria said bitterly. Nicholas left for work again, slamming the door loudly and startling little Andrea. Maria, after calming her son, began packing their things. When Clara came home, she saw bags lined up in the corridor. "Did someone come over?" the girl asked, surprised. "No, sweetheart, we are leaving," Maria calmly replied. "We are going to live apart from Dad now." "Is he going to live with Viola?" Clara asked unexpectedly. Maria sat down on the sofa, shocked by her daughter's question. Why would she ask that? "Mommy, I might be young, but I understand a lot," her daughter approached and hugged her. "I saw Viola kissing Dad a few times. One time she noticed me and threatened that if I told you, Dad would insult and hurt you even more. I didn't want that." "My dear, you're so grown up already. Is that why you told me Viola was bad?" Maria said, wiping away tears. "You should have told me earlier." "Well, don't worry, we'll be fine without Dad." "I know," the girl nodded, "and he won't be yelling at you anymore. And maybe now you'll let me draw?" "Of course, my darling." "Mommy, don't cry, we'll manage," the 8-year-old child hugged her mother tightly. Maria realized that everything she was doing was right. It couldn't be worse when children grow up seeing their mother constantly humiliated. No, they were better off without such a father. That same evening, Maria packed their things, picked up Clara and Andrea, went to pick up Damaso from daycare, and they all moved to the new apartment together. It was a modest home, but for the first time in years, Maria could breathe freely. No one would humiliate her anymore. Now she had to manage everything on her own, but she would cope. Of course, many tears were shed. She understood that she loved Nicholas, but his behavior could no longer be tolerated. She transferred her son to another daycare, enrolled her daughter in a simpler school, and started organizing her new life. A month later, they were divorced. Nicholas did not object, and he even showed up in court with his mistress. But Maria didn't care anymore. After the court session, her ex-husband demanded that Maria return the keys to the apartment and the car. "Please take them," she shrugged and handed everything over. Of course, it was much harder without a car now, but Maria understood it was better not to argue, otherwise, her ex-husband might cause her trouble. His parents, learning about the divorce, were actually pleased for their son. Maybe now he would find a worthy woman. Viola? No, they didn't consider her a serious option either, but their son would surely find his happiness. They made it clear when they accidentally met on the street. Maria was just returning from the art studio with Clara. Nicholas's parents didn't even pay attention to their granddaughter, pouring out their bitterness on Maria instead. "Let your son be happy," Maria calmly replied and walked on with Clara. The girl looked back at her grandparents, who didn't even glance at their granddaughter as if she was non-existent. Meanwhile, Maria's mother, upon learning about the divorce, was very worried. "How will you live now?" she exclaimed. "Maria, you have 3 children, you've never worked anywhere, you won't manage alone in the city. Come back home." Yes, Maria missed her home, the garden, but she knew she needed to stay in the city, at least for the children's sake. The education and health care were better here. "No, Mom, I won't come back," she said firmly. "I'll try to make my life work here." The money Maria made from the found jewels helped her greatly. She lived on it for some time, spending carefully, because she had already formulated a plan on how to survive in life. She knew that translating wouldn't bring in much money, calls from the publishing house were rare, and the work was minimally paid. She couldn't go out to work because Andrea was still very young. But she had an idea. During her years with Nicholas, Maria had learned to cook exceptionally well, and she decided to turn this skill into a business. First, she found out about the nearby offices. There were quite a few, which was a plus. People worked in offices, wanting to eat, and not everyone always had time for lunches. Maria decided to bake pies to sell. She bought the necessary ingredients, cookware, got a thermal bag, and started creating in her small rented kitchen. The first time, she went to the office across the street, having prepared about a dozen pies. The security guard, upon seeing her, wanted to kick her out immediately, but Maria handed him a couple of pies. "Enjoy," she said with a smile. The guard was stunned by her boldness, but took the pies, and the woman left the rest, saying that if they liked them, she could come every day with fresh pastries. The next day, Maria went to the office again. The same guard saw her and smiled. "Did you bring pies again?" he asked. "Yes. Forgive my boldness, but I'd like to ensure the staff of your company are well-fed and happy, and my pies can help with that. Did you try them? They're tasty, aren't they?" "I did," admitted the guard. "Even our boss tried them. He liked them too. Basically, he said you could come in." Maria went around the offices and sold all her pastries in about 10 minutes. The workers asked her to come back the next day, and one woman asked if Maria could bake pies with berries. "Of course, I can." Maria smiled. From then on, work was bustling. Pies with fish, meat, berries, all sold like hotcakes. After the first office, several more followed, and Maria was busy at the stove from early morning. After sending the kids to daycare and school, putting Andrea in a baby carrier, and grabbing the thermal bag, she went to sell delicious hot pies fresh out of the oven. Maria knew that selling pies informally was not an option, so she got everything organized properly. She obtained a health card, registered for the necessary documents. The regulatory authorities hassled her a few times, but then settled down. All of Maria's documents were in order. She began to earn from her pies, not much, but enough to live on with her children. There was indeed no help from Nicholas. His alimony only prompted a sad smile. 3 years passed. Demusso had started school, Clara had grown up, and little Andrea had gotten bigger. Maria continued to sell her pastries and was even thinking about opening her own small cafe. She shared these thoughts with Anastasia. "Really? You made that much from pies?" Her friend was surprised. "There's rent, taxes, staff wages. Where's the money coming from, Maria? Or did Nicholas help after all?" "I haven't seen him since the divorce," Maria smiled sadly. "Hasn't he wanted to see the kids even once? Can you believe it?" "No. But it's better this way, the kids are calmer. And so am I." Anastasia nodded in response. Yes, Maria had changed a lot recently, becoming more confident in herself. She had also noticeably lost weight. Apparently, all the worries helped her deal with her hormonal and pressure issues. Anastasia often hinted that Maria should find a man, as it's hard to be alone. "No one is needed," Maria always replied, and she sincerely believed it. And she also believed that no one would want her children. Then why look for someone? Just extra worries. But, returning to the conversation about money, Maria decided for the first time to confess to her friend where the initial capital, which helped in the pie business, came from. "What a story!" Anastasia was amazed. "And you kept silent all this time?" "I was afraid someone might claim their rights to those jewels, but it seems all quiet. And I still have a little money left, just enough to rent a space for the cafe and cover other expenses." "You've hit the jackpot, my friend." Anastasia laughed. "Who would have thought that one piece of paper could bring you such luck? By the way, I have a question. The publishing house must have read your translation. Do you think anyone got suspicious?" "Suspicious of what?" "I didn't steal anything from anyone. The confession even said, let the jewels be used by someone who needs them. And besides, I haven't heard from the publishing house in ages. I've got bigger things to focus on now." "Oh, yes, the pie shop entrepreneur." Anastasia chuckled. "Yep. Though, honestly, I dream of my cafe serving not just pies, but also pastries and all kinds of sweets." "Then stop dreaming," Anastasia exclaimed. "Go for it while there's still something left from your treasure." "Anastasia, I only asked one thing. Please, don't tell anyone about the jewelry. I don't want any trouble." "I won't," Anastasia promised, but her tone sounded a bit uncertain. Maria had already regretted confiding in her friend 1,000 times. Knowing Anastasia's loose lips, she'd likely let it slip sooner or later. But it was too late to change that now. Soon, Maria found a small place for the cafe. It was a convenient location. It had once been a cafeteria, so all the necessary equipment was already there. The owner rented it out for almost nothing. He had been living abroad for years, and this place had been passed down to him from some aunt. He didn't want to bother with selling it, so he hired a friend to handle the rental. Maria found the opportunity just in time. She eagerly started setting up her cafe, and soon it opened its doors. Alongside Maria, 2 other girls worked there, Pedro in the kitchen and Julia as a waitress. The girls were lively, skilled, and together, they made it work. Besides Maria's signature pies, they now offered buns, pastries, soufflés. Pedro also made excellent honey drinks and brewed amazingly delicious tea. Of course, at first, there weren't many customers. After all, there were plenty of eateries nearby. But word quickly spread about the fresh pastries and delicious drinks, and people started flocking to the cafe. Sometimes, even at closing time, the place was full. Anastasia, whenever she stopped by, was always amazed. "You've really made a name for yourself, my friend. Who would have thought that a former language teacher and homemaker who had lost faith in herself could turn things around like this?" And Maria looked wonderful now, no trace of extra weight, fit, slender, always with light makeup and her long brown hair. Maria, you really need a man. Start looking now, youth won't last forever. The kids will grow up, and you'll be left alone. Anastasia insisted, sipping aromatic honey tea and sitting with her friend in her cafe. Anastasia herself had recently married, and now she persistently encouraged Maria to do the same. And when would I even find the time? Maria genuinely wondered. I've got customers, suppliers, dough that's over-rising, a stove that's acting up. Plus, there are school meetings and kindergarten events. I don't have time for any of it. So, has Nicholas shown up again? Anastasia brought up the old topic. Enough about him. Maria frowned. She still felt that her personal life was a closed book. But one day, a meeting changed something in Maria's life. That evening, Pedro had asked to leave early, and Julia, feeling unwell, had also gone home. Maria was left alone in the cafe. Thankfully, there weren't many customers, just a couple in love, an elderly man and a middle-aged gentleman. The couple soon left. The elderly man hurried to the exit, but the man kept sitting there, slowly sipping coffee and nibbling on a pastry in small bites, glancing at Maria now and then, as she occasionally looked back from the counter. Why wasn't he leaving yet? He looked well-groomed, confident, and was clearly in no rush. Then Maria's babysitter called to say Andrea had a fever. Maria grew anxious, glancing at the remaining customer before finally deciding to approach him. Excuse me, but I need to close the cafe a bit early tonight. My child is unwell. Could you please hurry? I still need to lock up and call a taxi. The man nodded, finished his coffee, got up, and headed for the exit. Then he turned and looked at Maria. If you're in a hurry, perhaps I could give you a ride? That's probably inconvenient. You must have your own plans, Maria replied, feeling flustered. What are you saying? I have no other business at the moment, except one to help a beautiful woman. Maria blushed at such a compliment and politely declined his offer. 10 minutes later, as she was closing the cafe, she argued with the dispatcher on the phone. Young lady, what do you mean the taxi will only be here in 40 minutes? You told me it would arrive in 15 minutes. I need it urgently. The dispatcher responded, and Maria, frustrated, hung up the phone. Then, the same man approached her. I accidentally overheard your conversation, he said. And I still want to offer my help. Let me give you a ride. My car is right here, he pointed to a large SUV parked near the cafe. By the way, my name is Pedro. Maria, she replied. Well, I don't have many options. The taxi broke down, other drivers are busy, and my child is at home with a fever, and the nanny needs to urgently go to the train station to meet some relatives. Let's go then. Pedro smiled. Maria shrugged. He seemed like a decent man, and she felt no threat. She headed to his car, and soon they were driving through the darkening streets of the city. You're the owner of that cafe? Pedro asked, looking at the road. Yes, it's been almost a year, nodded Maria. Nice cafe, very cozy. I'm glad to see the place in skilled hands. The place? What concern is it of yours? Pedro looked at Maria and smiled. Well, you're renting it from me. So, you're the owner who lives abroad? Maria gasped. I didn't recognize you. I've only spoken to your assistant before. That's Inigo, my manager. Why didn't you say who you were right away? I just wanted to see how things were running from the sidelines. And I must say, I'm pleased with what I've seen. I hope you're not thinking of taking back the place. Maria worried. No, not at all. I own enough properties. Pedro smiled. I'm actually in construction. Lived abroad for several years, now planning to move back. Didn't things work out abroad? No, that's not the reason. Pedro shook his head. Just got tired of being overseas, want to be home. You understand? I think so. nodded Maria. Yes, there's no place like home. Here, the sky is bluer, and the women are much prettier, Pedro smiled, glancing at Maria. Maria blushed again, pretending not to understand the compliment. They said goodbye outside her house. Pedro asked for her phone number just in case, he said, in case there were any issues with the lease. Maria gave it to him. She was a bit anxious, of course. What if this Pedro wanted to evict her? But no, he didn't seem like that kind of person. And Andrea turned out to be okay. Probably just caught a little cold. Pedro called Maria the next day. I'd like to invite you to a cafe, but that's nothing new for you, he joked, so I want to offer you a trip on a pleasure boat. You know, I haven't been on a pleasure boat for a long time, and I want to. Would you join me? I haven't been on a boat for 1,000 years, probably. The kids have been asking, but I just haven't had the time. Well then, I invite you and your kids. Pedro, your invitation is quite impulsive, Maria smiled. I have 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. If you intended to invite me on a date, that's hardly possible, as I will definitely come with my kids. That doesn't scare me. Pedro laughed in response. Tell me, what time and where should I pick you up? Maria thought it over and agreed, saying that she and the children would be waiting for him at her home at 7 p.m. The sons were thrilled when Maria told them about the boat ride, but Clara just pouted. She didn't want to go with some stranger. All this time, the girl had been hoping that their father would return, but Nicholas had completely disappeared from their lives. Who is this Pedro? She asked her mother as they exited the building. Where did he come from? Why do we need him? Couldn't you have taken us on a boat ride yourself? Why ask some stranger? I didn't ask him, he offered himself. Maria seemed to justify herself on the way. And I think he is a very decent man. He owns the building where our cafe is located. They didn't notice that Pedro was already standing at the entrance and had overheard their conversation. And I really am quite a decent guy, he said with a smile. Maria and the children turned around. The woman blushed. Oh, I'm sorry, she blushed. It's all right. Let's get acquainted. He looked at Maria's children. My name is Pedro. The children shyly introduced themselves, and by the end of the evening, they were calling him Uncle Pedro. Even Clara didn't think Maria's new acquaintance was a bad guy. They cruised on the boat. The kids were noisy, eating ice cream and chips, while the adults talked. Pedro shared about himself. I was actually a late child, he smiled. My father was over 60 when I was born, and my mother was 40. She was his housekeeper. When his young wife ran off with a lover abroad, he was devastated. My mother told me he was a very difficult man. No wonder his wife left. But my mother loved him dearly and tried to console him. And so she did. Here I am. My parents weren't married, but my father, to his credit, supported us until he died and then left us an inheritance. Thanks to him, I got a decent education and managed to get by in life. Pedro said that after university, he worked in an architectural firm, then got into business. When his mother died, he already had a small construction company. After that, he married the daughter of a powerful man. His father-in-law convinced him to build a business abroad, and Pedro agreed. He lived abroad for several years, his business thriving, but his relationship with his wife ultimately fell apart. Pedro really wanted children, but Carolina, his wife, was adamantly against it. She didn't want to ruin her figure. He even suggested getting a surrogate mother, but she wouldn't hear of it. She simply didn't want kids. All the attention had to go to her. And then she took a lover, and Pedro could not tolerate that. He divorced her and decided to return home to his native city. By that time, he was well established, so he didn't depend on his wife's relatives. And now I'm home, Pedro smiled, finishing his story. Maria also briefly shared her story. It seems we're friends in misfortune. Our other halves turned out to be nasty people, he noted. It appears so, she smiled sadly. They looked into each other's eyes and fell silent. Surprisingly, they felt comfortable sitting together in silence, despite the kids' noise, the engine's hum, and the seagulls' cries. After the outing, Pedro walked Maria and the children home, thanking her for a wonderful evening. "Not a bad guy," Clara said once they were home. "And you didn't want to go." Maria tenderly hugged her daughter. "Mom, is he courting you?" "What are you talking about?" Maria blushed. "Nothing like that. We've only met twice." "Okay, but just so you know, we wouldn't mind if you two had a romance," her daughter replied seriously. "I think Uncle Pedro is very nice." Maria didn't say anything, just smiled, her heart skipping a beat. Could she still find happiness as a woman? And as she drifted off to sleep, she remembered their outing, Pedro's story. Then something clicked in her mind, his story about his elderly father Pablo and the young wife who fled abroad. Could these be the people from the story she had translated years ago? No, that couldn't be. Maybe Pedro's appearance in her life wasn't coincidental? Was he trying to reclaim family values? But if he was so wealthy, why would he need those few coins? Yet, wealthy people do know how to count their money. Maria spent that night restless, only falling asleep by morning, and in the morning, a message from Pedro arrived wishing her a good morning. Maria now found herself unsure of how to act around him. But Pedro persisted in entering her life, inviting her out with the kids, alone to restaurants, theaters, with no improper advances. Maria liked this man very much, and only the past story with the jewelry unsettled her. And that they were indeed gifts from his father to his wife was certain. Pedro had told her everything he knew about his father, and it matched the description from that confession. Then one evening, they were invited to a restaurant. It was a special night. They were alone in the room, musicians played, and waiters attended only to them. At one point, Pedro pulled out a ring. "Maria, will you marry me?" he said, a bit nervously. She froze in astonishment and delight. Yes, she had come to love Pedro with all her heart, but there was a secret between them. What to do with it? Finally, she decided. "I agree," Maria said. "But first, you must hear me out. You might not want to marry me after this." And Maria told him about how she had used the found jewelry. "And I'm sure these were the jewels your father's wife had," she concluded, looking down. When she looked up again, she saw Pedro smiling. "So what?" he said. "Even if it is true, it changes nothing. Essentially, my beloved woman used the jewelry. I think my father would not mind. You don't condemn me for what I did?" "Not at all. I'm even glad that it helped you get on your feet. Maybe if it weren't for them, we might never have met. So, Maria, my dear, don't worry about it. And why have you been silent for so long?" "I was afraid." "Of what?" "That you would think me a criminal." "What nonsense!" laughed Pedro. Then he slipped the ring on her finger, and they kissed. A month later, Pedro and Maria got married. It was a lavish wedding attended by the city's elite. The front pages of newspapers and magazines were splashed with photos and headlines about the successful businessman's marriage. There were also flattering mentions of Maria online: excellent baker confectioner, wonderful mother, beautiful woman. Maria's mother, attending her daughter's second wedding, prayed that this time her girl would be lucky. Maria's children, who had accepted Pedro, with Andrea even calling him Dad, as he couldn't remember his real father, were there too. The day was filled with congratulations and gifts, and the most surprising present came from Anastasia. Along with an envelope, the friend handed the newlyweds a brand new book with her name on the cover. "I wrote this book about you, my friend," Anastasia said, slightly embarrassed. "About me?" Maria was surprised. "Well, almost," Anastasia nodded ambiguously. "You'll read it later." After the honeymoon, Maria finally opened the gifted book. It was a romance novel that began with a girl finding jewelry. Yes, Anastasia managed to channel her chattiness and boundless imagination into a great piece of work. Even Pedro liked it. But there was one question he had. At the end of the story, the young wife joyfully announces they're expecting a baby. It doesn't quite match our romance, he smirked. Maria looked at him and lowered her eyes. Is there something I don't know? Pedro looked at her questioningly. I wanted to tell you later, but, she said, showing him a pregnancy test with 2 lines. Maria. My dear. How happy I am. He lifted her in his arms and twirled her around. The children rushed in at the noise. Guys, we're going to have a little brother or sister soon, Pedro exclaimed, and everyone burst into laughter. In due time, Maria gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, named Sophia and Eve. Now Maria was truly happy, a loving husband who adored her children. What more could a woman need? Well, there was still something. Maria's cafe was flourishing, and eventually, there were several of them around the city. She had to hire managers because family matters now took precedence. For a long time, she heard nothing about Nicholas, just receiving small child support payments. But one day, she received a court summons. It turned out that Nicholas wanted to renounce his paternity. Maria was deeply outraged, but Pedro was only pleased. I've long wanted all our children to have one surname and patronymic. Now there will definitely be no obstacles. Soon, the court deprived Nicholas of parental rights, and he disappeared from Maria's life completely, without even inquiring how his children would manage without his help. And the children? They completely forgot about him, even Clara, not to mention Damaso and Andrea. Now they have a new dad who truly loves them and will never hurt their mom.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.